and welcome to News Night. I'm Amritpal Singh. This is a show in which we tell you what happened around the world and in the country in the day just gone by. We also talk about the main stories, the top headlines, and discuss what transpired. External Affairs Minister Dr S. Jaishankar today spoke at the United Nations, and he asked the world, he spoke on Afghanistan, and he said that terrorist safe havens must completely be dismantled immediately if a durable peace and lasting peace in Afghanistan has to be found. And he said that this peace has to be both within Afghanistan and outside Afghanistan. That means the countries around it. Terrorist activities cannot allow to be affected from the territory of Afghanistan. We'll talk about that, we'll discuss that, and also we'll talk about the all-party meeting that the Prime Minister has called with the Kashmiri political leaders to further the political process in the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir. That and much more, but first up, the headlines we're tracking at this hour. External Affairs Minister Dr S. Jaishankar addresses the United Nations Security Council. A debate on Afghanistan, says India welcomes any move towards a genuine political settlement and a comprehensive and permanent ceasefire. Also says enduring peace and terror in Afghanistan, terrorist safe havens and sanctuaries must be dismantled immediately and terrorist supply chains disrupted. Prime Minister Narendra Modi shares his blog post on reforms, centre-state bhagidari, innovative policy making during COVID times, says an extra 2% of the GSDP was allowed, of which 1% was made conditional on the implementation of certain economic reforms. India's fight against COVID-19 continues. The Union Health Ministry advises Maharashtra, Kerala and Madhya Pradesh regarding the Delta Plus variant, asked to take up immediate containment measures in districts and clusters. Country reports less than 50,000 cases in 91 days. Active caseload now declines to 6,62,521. That's less than 7 lakh after 79 days. India's COVID-19 vaccination coverage crosses the landmark of 29 crores. BJP lashes out at Congress and its leader Rahul Gandhi for playing politics over vaccination. Spokesperson of the party, Sambit Patra, says that Congress should have known that rate of vaccination is least in states which are ruled by them. Also says whenever something good happens in the country, Rahul Gandhi gets irritated. Jammu and Kashmir National Conference leader Farooq Abdullah meets People's Alliance for Gupkar declaration. Leaders in his residence. Addressing the media, Abdullah says he will meet Prime Minister Modi and present the alliance's stand before the Prime Minister and the Home Minister. US President Joe Biden announces the allocation plan for 55 million of the pledged 80 million vaccine doses, approximately 16 million doses allocated to Asian countries. And now our top story. External Affairs Minister Dr S. Jaishankar on Tuesday addressed the United Nations Security Council debate on Afghanistan. Dr. Jaishankar stressed that removing terrorist safe havens is essential for ensuring durable peace in Afghanistan.
External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar on Tuesday addressed the United Nations Security Council debate on Afghanistan. In his address, the EAM said India welcomes any move towards a genuine political settlement and a comprehensive and permanent ceasefire in Afghanistan.
The international community, and in particular this Council, presses for a permanent and comprehensive ceasefire to ensure immediate reduction in violence and protection of civilian lives.
EAM also said any political settlement in Afghanistan must ensure that the gains of the last 2 decades are protected.
Any political settlement in Afghanistan must ensure that the gains of the last 2 decades are protected and not reversed. It should, therefore, preserve the constitutional democratic framework, and ensure the protection of the rights of women, children, and minorities.
He once again reiterated that there needs to be zero tolerance for terrorism.
For enduring peace in Afghanistan, terrorist safe havens and sanctuaries must be dismantled immediately and terrorist supply chains disrupted. There needs to be zero tolerance for terrorism in all its forms and manifestations, including its cross-border one. It is equally important to ensure that the territory of Afghanistan is not used by terrorist groups to threaten or attack any other country. Those providing material and financial support to terrorist entities must be held accountable.
External Affairs Minister also said India remains committed to steadfastly supporting Afghanistan during its transition.
India remains committed to steadfastly supporting Afghanistan during this transition. Our development partnerships, including more than 550 community development projects covering all 34 provinces, is aimed at making Afghanistan a self-sustaining nation.
India has played a significant role in the reconstruction and rehabilitation process in Afghanistan. New Delhi provided humanitarian assistance of 75,000 tons of wheat to strengthen food security during the COVID-19 pandemic and has been transported through Chabahar port. India has invested heavily in peace and development in Afghanistan. It is at the forefront in promoting investment in the country. Meanwhile, Pentagon has said that the US military could slow down its withdrawal from Afghanistan due to the gains made by the Taliban insurgents. Spokesman John Kirby has stressed that President Joe Biden's deadline of a full withdrawal by September remains in place, but added that pace could be adjusted based on conditions. Pentagon officials said last week that the withdrawal ordered by Biden in April after nearly 2 decades fighting Al-Qaeda and helping government forces battle the Taliban is around half completed. At the time of Biden's order, around 2,500 US troops and 16,000 contractors, mostly US citizens, were in the country. The Pentagon has already turned over several of its key bases to government security forces and has removed hundreds of cargo plane loads of equipment. With inputs from Abhishek Jha, DD India.
So what is India's position on Afghanistan? That's exactly what the External Affairs Minister was outlining today in front of the UN Security Council when the debate about furthering the political process or the reconciliation process of finding peace in Afghanistan was being discussed. And this is what he had to say. He primarily stressed that durable peace requires genuine double peace. This is the word that he used, double peace. Now, double peace, by double peace he means peace within Afghanistan, between various groups in Afghanistan, the Taliban, the other groups in Afghanistan, and around Afghanistan, the countries around it. That means terrorist safe havens need to be dismantled and dismantled immediately for ensuring peace. The financial supplies, the supply chains have to be disrupted, and it has to be made financially unviable for terrorism to continue and use the territory of Afghanistan for perpetrating terrorism both within Afghanistan and outside Afghanistan. Also, Afghan territory, as he said, should not be used by terrorists for attacking other countries. Now, essentially saying that a mechanism has to be put in place that groups like Taliban or other affiliates do not affect a policy, terrorism as a state policy. Unhindered access to high seas, important for the economic development of Afghanistan. As you know, Afghanistan is a landlocked country. The External Affairs Minister said that there should be no impediment to the access, say, to Chabahar port or even the other ports that Afghanistan uses in other countries. Gains of the past 2 decades should not be reversed if the political process has to go forward. India supports a leading role for the United Nations for finding durable peace. He said the UN has a important role to play to remove the odds in finding lasting and durable peace. Also, External Affairs Minister stressed upon that Afghanistan, it has to be an inclusive peace in Afghanistan in which all parties should genuinely try and work towards finding a political solution. To talk more about that, I am joined by my colleague Abhishek Jha. Abhishek, you tracked this important meeting that happened of the UN Security Council, where the External Affairs Minister spoke. From an Indian standpoint of view, what do you think was the most important point that the External Affairs Minister was trying to communicate to the world community?
Mrs. tried to highlight and underline at this important meeting. First was, as the world, including India, has acknowledged the fact that now Taliban, which has until now been considered and widely been considered for all the problems in Afghanistan, including terrorism in various parts of the world, is now going to be a major stakeholder in the new Afghan government dynamics, that whatever is going to be set up in the days to come. Going forward, what should be the concern when Taliban, which has been an affiliate and associate of various terrorist activities, becomes a part of the government in Afghanistan? There comes India's problem, where India has reiterated earlier also that with the inclusion of Taliban, the character of Taliban should not be the part of the government. It should not reflect the government's mandate, like pushing ahead with all those terror nexus, money laundering, terror financing, and all those activities that can ultimately have cascading effect on all neighboring nations, including India. That should be that needs to be taken care of. Another thing is that India has regularly said that there should be a role of United Nations in the whole holistic development and the peace process and all the political discussions that is going on in Afghanistan. So there is a word that India still wants, that UN should be a major stakeholder, major peace negotiator in the Afghan affairs. And third is that so far India has been available to Afghan people in mostly non-militarily and non-political way. Like India has always avoided to be involved in the politics of Afghanistan or the government setup there, but it has continuously been connected with the people of Afghanistan with various infrastructural and humanitarian aid and assistance in Afghanistan. And that has come to aid to India when India kind of lost touch with the Afghan government, but people still enjoy a rapport with India, and India enjoy a goodwill with Afghanistan. So these are the key major highlights External Affairs Minister tried to underline in his debate.
Exactly. That's what. That's why perhaps the External Affairs Minister was stressing that the gains made in the past 2 decades should not be reversed if the political process has to go forward. Abhishek Jha, many thanks. So what is the road ahead for Pakistan? We'll talk about that in our program, but that's just after a short break. Don't go away.
Namaste India.
Namaste land.
Marhaban ila al-Hind.
Indu ni hao.
Salam India.
Namaste India.
Namaskar Bharata.
Mui
Nous
India.
sommes land.
Nahnu hunud.
India.
माँ हिंदी हस्ती
Mung Hindian.
Salam Hindustan.
We are India.
Welcome back, and what is really the road ahead for Afghanistan? We'll talk about that. To talk more on that, I'm joined by Vivek Karju, former Indian ambassador to Afghanistan. Our in focus tonight is Afghanistan, the road ahead. That is our in focus on the show tonight. And as I said, Vivek Karju joins me to talk more about that. Ambassador Karju, today the External Affairs Minister spoke at this discussion which took place in the United Nations Security Council, where he stressed that unless the roadblock of terrorist safe havens is removed, durable and lasting and enduring peace cannot be found in Afghanistan. Was he referring to that once the Taliban come into the picture, which it now seems they will, that is something that the world needs to be needs to guarantee that their policies are not towards promoting terrorism.
I think the External Affairs Minister was reiterating India's traditional approaches towards Afghanistan and the principles that have guided these approaches. He did them rather well. He spelled out all the points that were needed to be stressed. And on terrorism, he was particularly straightforward, even though he didn't name any country, but no guesses need to be made as to the country he was referring. The real issue, as you've asked me, what is the road going forward? The real issue before the international community, including the regional countries, including India, is how will these principles be implemented on the ground? How will we achieve these objectives? Because Afghanistan has been in turmoil for well now, to my mind, 48 years. Certainly after 1978 has witnessed regime change, system change after system. And the hopes that were there in the early part of this century when the Taliban were ousted from Pakistan, those hopes have been belied, and now a new system has to be put. The expectation was that there will be an interim government consisting of the Taliban and people who are there in authority in Kabul. There will be ceasefire, and then the Afghan parties will decide on the future dispensation, bearing in mind that there cannot be a return to the system the Taliban had imposed between 1996 and 2001. That kind of Islamic emirate was simply out of the question. The international community would not accept. And I think that is a point that was underlined by many indirectly, sometimes directly, by many of the countries that spoke in the UNSC debate today on Afghanistan. But the issue before the international community with the withdrawal of American troops is that if they fail really to put in durable peace after 20 years, what will happen now? The hope is that the Afghans will show wisdom, that Pakistan will show wisdom and will look to the future, because Afghanistan can really become a bridge between Central Asia, South Asia. It can energize the entire region. But as of now, those hopes don't seem to be materializing because the Taliban are insisting on consolidating their military position. Now, there is violence, but there are groups in Afghanistan like ISIS, like Al-Qaeda, and we do not exactly know as to who is really indulging in the violence that is taking place against, say, the Shias or against women, etc. The Taliban denied, though we need not, and we do not need to take their denial at face value. So the picture is confused, and the regional countries, the External Affairs Minister is right, the regional countries, if possible, must come together and must reconcile. But that is only possible if Pakistan understands that countries like India have a legitimate interest and security interests involved in Afghanistan. So their role cannot be reduced to the margin. But there are these imponderables at the moment. So, on the one hand, the External Affairs Minister did very well in restating principles, but the elephant in the room, as always, is how will we achieve? How will the international community achieve the principles and translate them on the ground?
Ambassador Karju, it's very well for the Indian Foreign Minister to say that, and yes, the Indian Foreign Minister would raise these concerns. But, you know, if I quote from him, he says, for enduring peace in Afghanistan, terrorist safe havens and sanctuaries must be dismantled immediately, terrorist supply chains disrupted, there needs to be zero tolerance for terrorism in all forms and manifestations, including the cross-border one. But the fact remains that Pakistan has an anti-India agenda. We've seen them use that. They see Afghanistan as their strategic backyard. Now with Taliban coming into the power sharing agreement, earlier they were de facto rulers of some territory of Afghanistan. Now there will be legitimacy to it. So the fact remains that these supply chains, the umbilical cord will not be cut, and this will be directed at especially the state of Jammu and Kashmir.
Well, on that...
The Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir, let me correct myself.
On that, there are strong feelings in India, and I, for one, respect those feelings, that there may be manpower available to push across and to try to destabilize say the Union Territory. But the Taliban spokesmen themselves, and you don't need to take them at face value, all this has to be tested, are saying that they are Islamic nationalists. Now, the question is whether they will be focused on Afghanistan to consolidate their position there, or whether they will deliberately try to provoke it. What will they gain from provoking? Yes, there is a very, very strong nexus between the Taliban and the Pakistan. Of that there is no doubt. Yes, the ideology of the Taliban is in many ways totally against the principles of our democratic republic. But the question is whether they will be willing participants in playing the Pakistani game at trying to hurt our security. On that, we'll really have to wait and watch. And that is why I, for one, have advocated for a number of years, at least for 4 years, that we need to talk to the Taliban directly, to tell them this straight point, that you may have an ideology, we don't agree with that idea. We don't like it, we think it is antediluvian, that it is not of this world, not of this age, and the world doesn't accept that ideology. Please be conscious of it. Yes, we know that you have close ties with Pakistan. The question is, are you going to be their stooges? And are you willing to alienate us in this process? Because no Afghan government in the past has been willing to play the role of any other power's stooges. And that, if you look at history, then anyone sitting in Kabul, despite a close nexus initially with the Pakistanis, at the end of the day, has always looked to India too. That is what the history of the last 75 years and more shows.
Okay.
Let us not forget what happened with the fall, after the fall of Najibullah.
Okay.
At that stage too, the Mujahideen had taken a certain position. The Mujahideen were based in Pakistan.
Right.
But is it not a fact that there were groups within Afghanistan who also started and wanted to build close ties with India? Now, I am no advocate of the Taliban. Please don't misunderstand. All that I am suggesting is that we should not proceed on the basis of assumption. But we should state our principles, as the External Affairs Minister so well did today, and state them directly to the Taliban, and tell them that our security interests are paramount, and we hope you will not be anyone's pawn in this.
Ambassador, you've served in Afghanistan. Do you think that sort of pragmatism, given their, if I can use the word, fundamentalist or extremist ideological strain or stream that they come from, which sits closer to Pakistan? They may see the Pakistani game, but they sit ideologically closer to them, and geographically also, and you know they have the ethnic similarities and things like that. Given that, would the Taliban have the sort of pragmatism to understand this negotiation, and do they engage in such kind of negotiations?
A couple of things. My own experience of the Afghans cutting across is that while they have principles and they are strong on principles, yet they are extremely pragmatic when it comes to their security.
Okay.
That's point number one. Point number two, informally, I understand from various quarters, informally, the Taliban in the past have tried to convey through various channels, not officially, but informally, if they meet Indians, they say, please don't take us as Pakistani puppets.
Okay.
Now, I'm again no advocate of the Taliban. I'm not saying that we should take this at face value. What I am suggesting is that while the Taliban, while the Pakistanis will no doubt try to maintain this strong linkage with the Taliban, yet we need to test that out. We need to be prepared fully, prepare our defenses fully. So we should, certainly, we need to be wary if, so that our security interests are fully safeguarded.
All right.
Yet we should never, and that is the lesson of diplomacy, base it on ironclad assumption.
And that's
in substance, I would say that the External Affairs Minister again made a very wise statement today, outlining India's position, and he was unequivocal and correctly on terrorism, that this is something we will not accept. We will not accept any compromise with our security, but I only feel that we should state this directly to the Taliban and openly to the Taliban. And the time has come when, in fact, I felt it's been for a long time we should have done it. But, and let me reiterate that, you know, in dialogue with someone with whom you do not agree, like certainly we will never agree with the Taliban positions, that does not mean endorsement or agreement. This is the way the diplomatic game is played all over the world.
Absolutely. Ambassador Kaju, we leave it there. Thank you very much for joining us on the show and sharing your insights with us this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
And with a steady decline in COVID-19 cases across the country and ramped up process of COVID-19 vaccination, the country has reported less than 50,000 cases in 91 days. However, the fight against COVID-19 is still on as the government urged citizens not to let the guard down yet.
With every passing day, the cases of COVID-19 are showcasing a downward trajectory as the fight against coronavirus continues across the country. Vaccination is playing a key role in containing the spread of COVID-19, and the Union government is committed towards accelerating the pace and expanding the scope of COVID-19 vaccination throughout the country. With an aim to vaccinate all citizens by the end of 2020, revised guidelines for vaccination came into effect on 21st of June, and followed by the revised guidelines, more than 88 lakh beneficiaries were administered the dose of COVID-19 vaccines across the country on Monday itself. Out of 88 lakh 9,000 beneficiaries, 40 lakh 43,000 were women and 47 lakh 24,283 were men.
21 जून को भारत ने एक ऐतिहासिक माइलस्टोन अचीव किया। पूरे दिन में 88,09,000 कोविड-19 वैक्सीन की डोजेज एडमिनिस्टर की गई। तो ये एक बहुत बड़ा हिस्टोरिक माइलस्टोन है।
Rural coverage of vaccine has been remarkably emphasized. Rural coverage is intense and a good proportion. जो कल वैक्सीन लगे उसमें से 63.7%, 64% लगभग हमारे गांव में लगे, ग्रामीण क्षेत्रों में लगे, और 36% जो है वो अर्बन एरियाज में लगे।
Based on the recent findings of INSCOC, the Union Health Ministry has alerted and advised Maharashtra, Kerala and Madhya Pradesh regarding the Delta Plus variant of COVID-19 being found in some districts in these states. The states' chief secretaries have been advised to take up immediate containment measures in the districts and clusters as identified by INSCOC, including preventive crowds and intermingling of people, widespread testing, prompt tracing as well as vaccine coverage on priority basis. The Health Ministry also said that Covishield and Covaxin, both made in India vaccines, are effective against the Delta variant of COVID-19.
Both the Indian vaccines, which we are currently using in COVID vaccination program, we are using 3, but Sputnik V came much later. So Covishield and Covaxin both are effective against Delta variant.
Whereas in its phase 3 clinical trials, Bharat Biotech's Covaxin has proved to be 77.8% effective against the virus. Bharat Biotech submitted the data to Drug Controller General of India last week, based on which the subject expert committee held a meeting on Tuesday. The approval to conduct the phase 3 trial was given in the meeting held on Tuesday. Further to this, Bharat Biotech's data on Covaxin will be reviewed in the WHO meeting on Wednesday. The country reported less than 50,000 cases in 91 days. 42,640 new cases were recorded in the last 24 hours. India's active caseload now declines to 6,62,521. That is less than 7 lakh after 79 days. Till date, 2,89,26,038 total recoveries have been recorded across the country, whereas 81,839 patients recovered during the last 24 hours. Daily recoveries continue to outnumber the daily new cases for 40th consecutive day, and recovery rate increases to 96.49%. Daily positivity rate stands at 2.56%, which is less than 5% for 15 consecutive days.
जैसे टेस्ट्स बढ़े हैं वैसे वैसे देश में पॉजिटिविटी भी घटी है। जो मैक्सिमम पॉजिटिविटी की दर थी वो 4 मई से 10 मई के बीच में 21% से ज़्यादा पॉजिटिविटी थी। 15 से 21 जून के बीच में ये घटकर 3.4% हो गई है।
A steady decline is being witnessed across the country, resulting to gradual unlocking of most of the states. On the other hand, the vaccination process is also ramping up across the nation. While the government, along with states, are putting their best foot forward to contain the spread of the virus, it is also the responsibility of all citizens to follow COVID-19 protocols appropriately and at all places in order to win this fight against COVID-19. Bureau Report, DD India.
The Supreme Court on Tuesday refused to interfere in the assessment policy of the CBSE and ICSE for evaluation of Class 12 students. The court dismissed the pleas challenging the cancellation of examinations in wake of the COVID-19. The court said the decision of the boards and the government is based on the safety of students and welfare of over 20 lakh students. The court also observed that there should be a finality to the status of exams, as uncertainty was affecting the psychology of the students. Meanwhile, the Attorney General assured that the physical examinations would be conducted between 15th of August to 15th of September. The students who want to appear in the physical examinations can opt for it. He also informed the court that the UGC will ask all colleges to plan their admission dates, keeping in mind the itinerary of different education boards. The COVID virus is very much here, but still many are least bothered about following COVID protocols. My colleague Vishal Beristo brings you a reality check from the Chandni Chowk area in Delhi.
I'm here inside the Chandni Chowk market, and we've seen how people, they have their callous attitude. Not many of them are putting on a mask. So let's talk to them and find out why they are not putting on a mask. Let's talk to some of them. I have a gentleman here. We'll talk to him now. As he sees, he is running away. भैया सुनो, क्या नाम है आपका? नाम क्या है?
सर इनसे बात कीजिए।
मास्क क्यों नहीं लगा रखा आपने?
नहीं मास्क मैंने एक्चुअली लगा रखा है, पानी पीने गया था।
डर नहीं लग रहा आपको?
नहीं डर क्यों नहीं लग रहा है, डर का तो सवाल ही है।
फिर हाथ में लेके घूम रहे हो। Then you see people are not putting it on safely. They are carrying just to show that they are carrying a mask, but they are actually not putting in. The moment they see us, they start running away. क्या नाम है आपका?
सर हमारा नाम विक्की है।
विक्की, आपको डर नहीं लगता था भीड़ में मास्क नहीं लगा रखा आपने?
सॉरी सर।
और आपने भी हमें देख के लगाया, आपको डर नहीं लगता ऐसे?
लगता है गलती से वो नीचे हो गया, बात कर रहे थे इसलिए।
So there you see how people are really not concerned about this menace, this pandemic, and there you see lots and lots of them. It's quite a congested area. People, they are really not bothered why to take on a mask. Mask क्यों नहीं लगा रखा आपने? So the moment you ask them, they put on a mask. There you see, when we ask them why they are not putting on a mask, are they not scared? They'll show off their mask. But many, they are least bothered, and this is a big, big concern. We've seen how after the first wave, people got relaxed, and what happened in the second wave. We cannot let this happen, and we have to be very, very vigilant. So we have all to stand together unitedly in this fight against the coronavirus. With cameraman Anil, this is Vishal Baristo for DD India, Delhi.
So the idea of us showing you this report is that unless people, follow COVID-appropriate behavior, the threat of the pandemic still looms large. We could be into a bad situation that we saw last month, and we'll have to together defeat it. So we appeal to you to kindly follow the COVID-appropriate behavior, follow the COVID protocols of wearing a mask, especially when you go out, maintaining social distancing, washing your hands regularly. That is the only way we can break the transmission chain. Moving on, the BJP took on Congress leader Rahul Gandhi after he released a white paper on the union government's handling of the COVID crisis. The BJP accused him of playing politics over the pandemic and of Congress-ruled states managing the pandemic badly.
Responding to Rahul Gandhi's white paper on the centre's COVID management, the BJP on Tuesday accused the Congress of politicizing India's ongoing battle against the COVID pandemic. BJP said, whenever a decisive point comes in India's battle against COVID-19, Congress tries to politicize it.
किंतु दुखद है कि आज सुबह राहुल गांधी ने प्रेस कॉन्फ्रेंस करके एक व्हाइट पेपर की बात की है और कहीं न कहीं अड़ंगा लगाने का काम किया है। इस लड़ाई में निर्णायक मोड़ आए उस समय उन्होंने राजनीति करने की भरसर प्रयास किए। कहीं न कहीं इस लड़ाई को डिरेल करने का अथक परिश्रम राहुल गांधी ने किया है।
BJP accused Congress-ruled states of failing to manage the COVID crisis. The party said Congress-ruled states have lagged behind in carrying out vaccination. The second wave of COVID started from Congress-ruled states, and they were the worst affected too. Taking a swipe at the Congress, BJP spokesperson said, the Congress must clarify whether the members of the first family of the party have taken the COVID vaccine or not.
क्या राहुल गांधी जी ने वैक्सीन ले लिया है? राहुल गांधी, are you vaccinated? क्या प्रियंका वाड्रा जी ने वैक्सीन ले लिया है? प्रियंका जी, are you vaccinated? रॉबर्ट वाड्रा वैक्सीनेटेड हैं या नहीं है? बिकॉज जो कांग्रेस की फर्स्ट फैमिली है, क्या ये फर्स्ट फैमिली वैक्सीनेटेड है या नहीं है?
Attacking Congress leader Rahul Gandhi, BJP said whenever the nation takes decisive steps, Congress party questions it. With inputs from Shailendra Mishra, DD India.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi shared his blog post on reforms center-state bhagidari, innovative policy making during the COVID times. The post was posted on LinkedIn platform. In a blog post, Prime Minister Modi further said the states were able to raise an extra 1.06 lakh crore rupees in 2020-2021. He said the significant increase in availability of resources was made possible by an approach of the center-state bhagidari. In May 2020, as part of the Atmanirbhar Bharat package, the government announced that states would be allowed enhanced borrowing for 2021. The year 2020-2021, the financial year. Prime Minister Modi said that an extra 2% GSDP was allowed, of which 1% was made conditional on implementation of certain economic reforms. He said this was a nudge incentivizing the states to adopt progressive policies to avail additional funds. He added that the results of this exercise are not only encouraging but also run contrary to the notion that there are limited takers for sound economic policies. The Prime Minister said 4 reforms to which additional borrowings were linked had 2 characteristics. Firstly, each of the reforms was linked to improving the ease of living to public and particularly the poor, the vulnerable and the middle class. Secondly, they also promoted fiscal sustainability. And in a tweet, the Prime Minister said that reforms by conviction and incentives, my LinkedIn post of innovative policy making in time of COVID-19, powered by the spirit of the center-state bhagidari. And Jammu and Kashmir's Gupkar alliance, led by veteran Kashmiri politician Farooq Abdullah, on Tuesday said that they will attend an all-party meeting on Thursday with Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The government has called the all-party meeting to discuss important issues concerning the Union Territory. The all-party meeting is being seen as Prime Minister Modi's major outreach to further the political process in Jammu and Kashmir.
Year 2019, 5th August. Union Home Minister Amit Shah had presented Jammu and Kashmir Reorganization Bill 2019 in Rajya Sabha. It had become clear that Jammu and Kashmir will see comprehensive development in the coming days. Amit Shah, with the passage of this bill on 6th August, the Parliament gave nod to make Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh 2 separate union territories. Ladakh would be a union territory without legislature and Jammu and Kashmir a union territory with legislature.
केंद्र सरकार ने अनुच्छेद 300 हटाने के साथ ही अभी कुछ कालखंड के लिए, और मैं बताता हूं कुछ कालखंड के लिए, जम्मू कश्मीर को सीधे केंद्र सरकार के शासन में रखने का फैसला बहुत सोच समझ कर लिया है। हम सभी चाहते हैं कि आने वाले समय में जम्मू कश्मीर विधानसभा के चुनाव हो, नई सरकार बने, नए तेजस्वी ऊर्जावान नौजवान एमएलए बने, मंत्री बने, मुख्यमंत्री बने। मैं जम्मू कश्मीर के लोगों को भरोसा देता हूं कि आपको बहुत ईमानदारी के साथ पूरे पारदर्शी वातावरण में आपके अपने प्रतिनिधि चुनने का अवसर तुरंत मिलेगा।
Except Clause 1 of Article 370, its all other provisions as well as Article 35A have been abrogated. With this, all those laws were implemented in Jammu and Kashmir which are there in other states. This helped in counter corruption and sponsor terrorism to suffer a heavy blow. At the same time, a big initiative was taken to strengthen democracy in the Union Territory. Elections were held under 3-tier Panchayati Raj system. Public participation increased. Gram Panchayat Block Samiti and Zilla Parishad got more rights than before. All flagship schemes started to become ground reality and framework of good governance developed in the state. Now the time has come for Constitution of Assembly in the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir. Discussions are also going on about delimitation. On such issues, the upcoming meeting of political parties of J&K with Prime Minister Modi on 24th of June is being considered quite significant. Before the all-party meeting, several parties held a meeting at the residence of National Conference leader Farooq Abdullah in Srinagar. All leaders are quite hopeful of the meeting with the Prime Minister.
तो वज़ीर आज़म की तरफ से दावतनामा आया है और हम उस दावतनामे में जाने वाले हैं। यहाँ पे हमें उम्मीद है कि हम अपने जो मौक़िफ़ है उसको वहाँ पे वज़ीर आज़म साहब और होम मिनिस्टर साहब के सामने रखें।
Jammu and Kashmir Assembly had 83 seats before reorganization and it used to be constituted for 6 years. Though area-wise Jammu is bigger, it had 37 seats while Kashmir division had 46 seats. The demand of delimitation was growing louder by the earlier government's order to postpone it till 2026. An effective delimitation was held in Jammu Kashmir way back in 1993. The next delimitation was due in the year 2005, but in the year 2002, Farooq Abdullah government freezed it till the year 2026. There are many electoral reforms that are needed in Jammu and Kashmir. Many such people are included in the voters list who don't have right to cast their vote despite being Indian citizens. Effective implementation of reforms and preparation for holding free, fair and fearless elections is also a key issue. With Vinod Mishra, Bureau Report, DD India.
So what could transpire at that meeting which now the Kashmiri leadership, political leadership has confirmed that they are ready to come for this meeting. We'll talk about that. That brings to our In Focus tonight, Jammu and Kashmir all-party meet furthering the political process. And to talk more about that, I'm joined by senior journalist Aarti Tikku on the show. Aarti, good evening. Thank you for coming on the show. My question to you, what is the government trying to achieve by reaching out to the Kashmiri leadership, which is popularly referred to as the Gupkar Alliance?
Well, thank you for that question. It is quite evident that the government is trying to resume the political process which had been disrupted 2 years ago when the state of Jammu and Kashmir was reorganized, bifurcated into 2 union territories, one Ladakh and the other one is Jammu and Kashmir. And if you remember, and your audience would also remember that at that point of time, just ahead of that decision, the mainstream political parties of Kashmir had threatened that there would be no one representing India if the government, if the central government was going to nullify or abrogate Article 370, which granted special status to Jammu and Kashmir under the Indian Constitution. And if you also remember, the same political parties had basically said that they would not resume any political process, they would not join any or participate in any of the political processes started by the government, and they were almost in defiance and almost in a rebellion, I would say, against the state. And today the same political parties, you know, are quite keen on meeting the government. They are keen.
So Aarti, what's made them come around?
Sorry?
What has made them come around? What has made the NC, the PDP come around and say today that yes, we will go and participate in this meeting? We still know their opposition to scrapping of 370 and 35A.
Absolutely. Well, the issue is that all these mainstream political parties of Kashmir have turned irrelevant because the people today, the voter today in Jammu and Kashmir has rejected their politics of duplicity, their politics of lies and hypocrisy. These are the same political parties which sold a lie of Article 370 and special status of Jammu and Kashmir being sacrosanct that nothing, nobody in no power in India could have changed it. Whereas the fact is that Article 370 was a temporary provision in the Indian Constitution. It had to go because it was already, you can say, hollowed out by the state government, successive state governments on their own. And there was absolutely, no issue to for any of these political parties to make.
So you're saying that they were finding themselves increasingly irrelevant in the whole political process of Jammu and Kashmir, Aarti, and that's what's made them sort of see reason at least and say that they will participate in this meeting and listen to what the centre has to offer. What is your sense, though the government hasn't put out the agenda, the central government, what could transpire at this meeting?
Well, I think the government will certainly try to draw feedback of each and every political representative. It will hear their points of view. It will also invite suggestions and recommendations. Because in the last 2 years, we have seen, because of the coronavirus pandemic, political activity got disrupted not only in Jammu and Kashmir but in the rest of the country as well. More so in Jammu and Kashmir because after the state was transformed into a union territory and all the mainstream political process had come to disruption. Okay. And we did not see any state legislative assembly elections or union territory assembly elections. What we did see, however, were local body elections.
Local body elections, yes.
Panchayat elections. We saw DDC elections, and we also got to know that people have rejected the politics of separatism, politics of soft separatism, which National Conference and PDP were peddling and propagating in Jammu and Kashmir for decades altogether. And we see that people are interested in coming forward and joining a political process which is honest, which is sincere, and which does not do any of the theatrics, any of the falsehood narratives that were peddled in the last 30 years.
Absolutely. We'll leave it there, Aarti. Let's wait for the 24th and see what transpires at this important meeting. Many thanks for being on the show and sharing your insights with us this evening. Thank you. And using the right to reply at the 47th session of the Council in Geneva, the UNHRC Council, the Indian representative said that systemic persecution of minorities, including Christians, Ahmadiyas, Sikhs, Hindus, through draconian blasphemy laws, forced conversions and marriages and extrajudicial killings has become a regular phenomenon in Pakistan. Pakistan has also become the land of enforced disappearances, extrajudicial killings and arbitrary detentions of political activists, students, journalists, human rights defenders and minorities. Pakistan, as its state policies, continues to provide pensions to dreaded and listed terrorists and host them on its territory. Reacting to fresh PLA activity along the line of control, CDS said the Chief of Defence Staff, General Bipin Rawat, said that we have to keep our guard up and keep a watch on all activities of the Chinese. He said that additional troops have been deployed along the northern front, and in doing so, the presence is being maintained across the line of actual control, or along the line of actual control.
We have always maintained a kind of a posture where we have dual tasker troops. That means troops who are deployed along the northern borders are capable of operating on the western borders, and we also have the capability of moving troops from the western borders to the northern borders. So now what we have done is, yes, we have earmarked some additional troops for the northern borders. So I would not like to say that have we raised to strike code. No, that is not the way forward. But yes, we have committed some additional troops to our northern borders because we do find that the northern borders are becoming more active and are actually becoming our primary threat for us.
And that's all the time we have for in the show. Thanks for watching, and remember, be safe, follow COVID protocols and get vaccinated if you are eligible. Thanks for watching. Namaskar.